Thanks for joining me for Journey to Easter, our Holy Week series exploring the significance and the meaning of each of the days of Holy Week in the Christian calendar throughout the world. I'm Stephen Cap Perry, host of the podcast, and in this episode, we're speaking with Rev Dani Lee. She is from St. Mary's Episcopal Church in Provo, and we're asking about Maundy Thursday. I never use the word Maundy in my everyday life. What does that mean?
So it's one of those words that no one ever uses, really, except for, I think, this title. It comes from the Latin, from mandatum, which means commandment. So we remember it as the day when Jesus gave the greatest commandment to us, so that's why we called it that way. It's the Thursdays of the commandment.
A new commandment I give unto you. Wonderful. How does that get celebrated in the Episcopal Church?
So a lot of churches will have the custom of the foot washing, and there are mostly two ways of doing that. Either everyone comes forward and the priest and sometimes the deacon wash the parishioners' feet, or how we do it at St. Mary's is that each person gets to wash someone's feet. So you kind of take turns, and we lean into that because we think that that's a great practical application of what Jesus said, to love one another as I have loved you. And, Jesus knelt down and cradled his friend's feet in his hands and engaged in this very intimate act of love. So I think that's an opportunity for all of us to do so, right? Because a lot of times we talk about, oh yes, we love our friends, we love our neighbors. But there's an extra layer of intimacy when you actually have to touch them and when you actually have to touch their feet, right? Like, have you ever washed your friend's feet?
No, only my children's.
Yeah, right? Like, there's that level of intimacy that's not always comfortable with people that you're not very close to, like your spouse or your children, right? So engaging in that with sometimes, a stranger that might have just ended up at church with you, that night. There's an applicability of that commandment to love that goes beyond just words. It goes into actions. So I really like that engagement. It's quite uncomfortable, and it's good for us to be uncomfortable at times.
I've heard, for instance, Pope Francis has a tradition of washing the feet of certain people. Sometimes it's been homeless people, sometimes people with illnesses or disabilities. I think what you're saying is to really show love for people despite their circumstances.
Yeah.
And the tradition is that this would have been at the Last Supper on this Thursday.
Yes.
Well, I love that. How about just in your home or in your life? Is there a thing that you keep in mind, or how do you observe that personally?
Well, it's just a reminder that to me, I like to call it sort of like the brave night, right? Because Jesus is in front of this big decision. Like, he can say no. He doesn't have to go through that suffering, right? And he sits there and prays, can this be a different way? But I think as he's praying, he realizes that maybe there isn't, or maybe there is, but he still chooses to go forward, right? Like, we don't know what God told Jesus in that prayer, right? So I call it sort of like the night of bravery because Jesus knows what's ahead of him and he still chooses to move forward. And I think that's a reminder to us that sometimes we get a little bit too comfortable in our own lives and we don't remember to be in difficult situations. And a lot of times we don't know our own strength and what we can go through, right? So it's a reminder that we can lose all that we have in a second sometimes, and that it's okay because God is in there too. God is in that journey of, grief and disaster and hardship and whatever it is. God is in there too. There's a darkness that's coming, and God is in that darkness as well. We're not alone. So I don't apply that, in my household necessarily with my kids. I'm not at home a lot with my kids during Holy Week, right? So
True.
They're mostly left to their own devices. But I think it's a great opportunity to have conversations in your home about what does it mean to take your life for granted, and what would it mean to lose all of it, and how would you find God in that loss as well?
Thank you. Anything else you want to say about Maundy Thursday? Or that you'll be sharing the night of the Journey to Easter concert?
Yeah, so it's also a momentous night for us in the Christian tradition, because that's where Jesus institutes the Eucharist, or, the sacrament.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a beautiful foreshadowing. The way that he breaks the bread is how his body will be broken on the cross.
Just days from then.
Yes, exactly. And then the fact that, that broken bread, he gives it to his friends and says, do this every time you get together, right? Which to me is an encouragement that feeding each other and sitting together for mealtime is something that is sacred in itself. But also getting together in community to share in the sacrament and to remember that a part of Christ is in us and we are now the body of Christ, that's essential to our living and to our existing into the world. So it's such a momentous night. Like Maundy Thursday is such a huge night. There are so many pieces, and there is so much that Jesus did in that short amount of time that has stayed with us and with our traditions and has influenced and made this pattern of life for us, right? Like every single Sunday, we break bread in remembrance of Christ's sacrifice for us. That is incredible. And we've been doing it for thousands and thousands of years. Right? Well, 2. But it's still plural, right? So it's just beautiful to me to have this night of remembrance, where just doing what Jesus did in that night can offer so much revelation to what is meaningful in life.
Reverend Dani, thank you so much. I love your passion and your appreciation of what happens on that day, and the way that you act that out and provide not just a chance for you as clergy, but for the members of your congregation in the washing of the feet to actually serve one another. And that seems to me a very touching moment.
And a lot of people, I've spoken to people over the years, and I've asked, like, is this uncomfortable? And they all say, yes, and I love it. And a lot of people will say, well, I went there knowing that I'm just not going to participate in the washing of the feet. And then along the way, I decided that, no, I'm going to do it, right? Like, there's this invitation that is very appealing to people. We all want to be more Christ-like, and that's one practical way to do it.
Yeah. We talk about walking in the footsteps of Jesus, but usually it's a metaphor for actions and attitudes, but there's a case to actually act as he acted.
Yeah. Yeah, and it can be as small as just washing someone's feet at church. And that can be momentous and transformative in itself.
I hope you'll join us in person on Palm Sunday, April 13th, 2025, at the Marriott Center on the Brigham Young University campus for the Journey to Easter concert, which features the Luke's Choral Society, Orchestra, and Friends, as well as local pastoral reflections on each of the days of the Holy Week leading up to Easter. Reverend Dani will be there presenting some thoughts as well. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Reverend Dani is at St. Mary's Episcopal Church in Provo, Utah. You can learn about each of the days of Holy Week, their significance and their meaning on Journey to Easter, our podcast series on the In Good Faith podcast. You can subscribe Apple, Spotify, and see all of the interviews on YouTube. In Good Faith is a production of BYU Radio.